Welcome to Ask Sean, where I explore all sorts of questions about life, relationships, and being human. I'm Sean Slevin, a licensed professional counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist. And if you have a question for me, you can submit that anonymously at asksean.org. So I was just actually recording another video where I was talking about the importance of facing our triggers. And in one of the examples, as I was kind of rambling on, I was thinking about the dynamic of, if we are growing and healing, we expand and we're able to, for example, be with people whom we disagree with. And that got me thinking about how I've actually been wanting to do some kind of a video on kind of how to talk to people you disagree with, how to talk to people that maybe whose beliefs you find very detestable, even that it's like, I can't even comprehend how you could hold that belief. It feels so offensive. So yeah, I honestly haven't, like, I literally just finished the other video and was like, I'm just gonna go and see what comes up in terms of my thoughts about this. So this may be even more rambly than usual. Although the irony is it may not seem all that different on the outside, but I guess one of my first thoughts is that that it's actually, I'm being a little bit coy by saying how do we talk to people we disagree with? Because I think actually really the first key point, and this is not going to be like some like brilliant insight. I mean, I think other people have said this kind of thing, but the first key point is actually, how do I listen? How can I develop the capacity to listen to those whom I disagree with? Now, listen here doesn't mean listen and obey, right? Like, so I'm not thinking about, it's like a whole different can of worms, right? If we're in a scenario where we have people in authority over us whom we disagree with, and I've had situations like that in my life where it's like, and I had to really evaluate, okay, where are sort of my personal ethical boundaries, and where are, okay, I don't like this. This isn't how I would do it, but it's not violating my personal ethics, and so I'm just, I need to follow the person that who's in authority over me, even though I don't necessarily like it, or maybe like them in that moment. So that's its own difficult thing. I'm not. That's totally a rabbit trail, and I don't think that's where I want to go in this video. I'm more so thinking about situations with, where there's not any of those funky, authority dynamics, like, and by authority I mean, like, you're in an organization where you've got a boss or something, and so it's like, okay, I have to navigate that. I report to this person, they pay me, and or people in military, there's very clear authority structures there, right? So that's what I mean in terms of there are that those are more complicated in terms of how do we navigate that, and how do we kind of be clear about our own personal ethics, but also navigate having people in authority over us. But in much of life, it's not that, right? It's in much of life, it's it's some kind of peer dynamic, right? It's just fellow humans, and whether we're peers in an organization, peers just in society. This can be peers in community settings of various kinds. Kind of organizations that are organized around a particular cause, or of course, certainly, religious organizations, institutions, so can be a context as well. And so, and so, yeah, we can be in that context, or we could be, different organizations, different, maybe different religions, right? And so how can we sit across from each other, right? When we know that we disagree, and maybe disagree about things that are really freaking important to us. And how can we develop the capacity to be willing to listen? How can we develop the capacity to be curious? And this like, actually, this comes up all the time in my work with couples, because places where couples are stuck, there typically are the seemingly intractable disagreements where each side has really strong feelings of just how could you feel this way or see things this way? What the fucking hell? And it seems so incomprehensible, and there's so much energy up that that there's no empathy in the room, or there's either very little, or often by the time folks are coming to me, the empathy's been all exhausted. And so when they come to this topic, it's just triggeredness, on both sides in this case. So yeah, it's like we would rather it be, well, how do I talk to this person? How do I make them understand? That's what we want. That's where we all want to start. And that's what I would like too. But here's the thing. I don't know that I've ever seen that work. Like in these places where there is deep difference, and with that, potentially deep pain and misunderstanding, or lack of understanding, even we'll just say that, lack of understanding. Perhaps a lot of mutual disparagement. The other person, the other side, the other group, they're the stupid ones, the foolish ones. They're the ones that don't fill in the blank, listen to the science, or listen to the research, or listen to tradition, or listen to spiritual, heritage, listen to religious texts, whatever the thing is. And these can all be things that are worth like giving some listen to, right? But we have our disparagements, we have our ways of saying, oh, they're the fucking idiots, but I'm not. I've got it right. I've got it all figured out. The reality is none of us has it totally right. We're all kind of groping around in the dark, trying to figure out how the hell to become more human. And in some places we've gotten some, decent directions on things. And in other places we might think we do. And, it'll be like 10 years from now that we'll be like, wow, I was so off base. So we can have so much judgment towards each other. And so I guess that's one of the things I want to highlight is nobody's going to hear each other if we are bringing a lot of judgment to the table. And look, here's the thing. I know you want me to tell you how can you make the other person hear you and get you? But like I said, there's no actual way to make that happen. You don't have control over anyone else. I don't have control over anyone else. I mean, I'm a therapist, right? Like, I mean, we're supposed to be able to do Jedi mind tricks on people, like, here, now, don't feel that, feel this, and now you're all better. That was really goofy. But, and that's not actually how therapy is. And therapists are not supposed to manipulate. And even if we tried to manipulate, that wouldn't work. Like, it wouldn't stick, right? Pardon me. Like, change when I'm working with clients, change sticks when I help it emerge from inside. My job is to shepherd that process. My job is to nudge, even push a bit in places, and then hang back in places. And so it's very much this dance I'm doing with each client, trying to help the growth and healing of that particular moment kind of bubble up and emerge and become a little more solid. But it has to come from within them. Like, I can't do it for them. If I do it for them, then it's not theirs, and they actually don't expand. Their capacity to do more and be more themselves isn't actually expanding. They're just becoming like a puppet or something. I mean, just as a theological aside, I think this is one of the reasons, I'm a Christian, in case you don't know. I think this is one of the reasons that God gives humans free will. Is like, I mean, sometimes this gets in, I got to be careful with my rabbit trails. This opens up a huge freaking can of worms, which I'm not going to be able to like unpack really. But, but the whole, like, why does God allow bad things, right? Why doesn't he just make us robots? Why doesn't he just stop everything? But I think then we wouldn't actually be taking ownership. We wouldn't be participating in the kind of world that we're living in. And so apparently, this is my hypothesis. Apparently, it's really important to God. Like he like holds our responsibility, our autonomy, our ability to make choices. Like he holds that super high. Like he's willing to allow us to do horrible things to each other, which I believe like breaks his heart like over and over and over and over again. Like, I mean, I know that in American culture we often have this idea of like this angry, like shaking his fist God, ready to like zap us with lightning bolts, which honestly sounds a lot more like the old Greco-Roman gods like Zeus. But I think God is like constantly weeping because he loves us, I believe. Boy, I'm really going on a rabbit trail here theologically. I'll come back to the main topic in a moment, but I'll finish this thought. But I think he really loves us, and I think it breaks his heart, just like it would for any parent, any father or mother, to see their children like wounding each other. And yes, there are places where the parent intervenes, but the parent can't intervene forever. There's a point at which it's like, okay, you're old enough, you've got to fly on your own, and you may ruin your life, and I can't stop you. And that's I mean, there are many, 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 many parents who have experienced that to all sorts of degrees, watching your child shipwreck themselves. So I think I think that's God's heart for us humans. Like he so respects our right to make our own choices that he allows us to do what we want, even when what we want sometimes is to hurt ourselves or hurt others. So that was a long rabbit trail, but the point is, we don't have control over other people. Like even parents don't truly have control over their children. They can like rein them in to varying degrees, right? Like when they're smaller, and they can restrict them and limit them, but they can't actually control their psyche. They're still in that role of how do I shepherd this child into becoming more human, into growing up hopefully into a halfway decent, responsible, kind human being. So this is a really fundamental thing of like, okay, so there's somebody, there's a person, there's people, there's a group, maybe multiple groups where I don't agree with them, and they don't agree with me, and about things that are really freaking important to both of us, and I want them to understand me. And again, this applies to like the things going on in society. Thus also applies to maybe your close friend, maybe your partner, maybe a family member. It's like we disagree on some things, and I can't make you understand. So that's the first thing. I have to grapple with that. I have to be sitting with that. It's not enough for me to intellectually say that. I've got to be with what does that mean emotionally? Like for me personally, me, Sean, like that has meant a lot of raging at the sky, raging at God, and weeping and weeping and weeping at people in my history and my life who are never going to know me and understand ways that they hurt me and the fullness of that, and are in some cases are never going to be able to really apologize. And there's a whole lot more I could say about all that, but just touching that as an example, like it's required a lot of me. It's required more than I thought I could bear. It's required, honestly, experiences that I thought would kill me. I thought I can't live through like feeling this pain. I'm not going to survive this. So I've had to come back to again and again that I can't make this happen. And honestly, it still sometimes is a temptation. There still can be moments where something creeps in, a little bit of a fantasy about like, oh, what if I da da da, like get them to get it, or kind of I could get it back at them a tiny little bit, and make them hurt like they hurt me or something. Like this stuff holds on. And so those are indicators, right? That's like there's still a bit more pain for me to be with. There's still a bit more pain for me to grieve. So, this is like complicated, right? Like we think, okay, it's, how hard can it be? I mean, although we obviously it can be really hard, right? To like, talk to people that we disagree with, because otherwise we'd all be doing a freaking better job. But yet we think it should somehow be easy. This is our, kind of our American, I don't know, youthful naivete. That like, it should be easier in this. Why is it so freaking hard? Like, well, it's always been hard. um, but yeah, so one of the reasons is because we have to deal with our own grief as much as we can. We have to deal with our grief enough that we can start to imagine that person is a human just like me. I don't understand them. I don't agree with them. But somehow they hurt too. Somehow they get scared too. Somehow they feel ashamed too, just like me. We need to start to be able to, on a felt level, not cognitively. Doesn't freaking matter almost what you think up here. What are you able to feel in here? What are you able to be with in your emotions, in your body? What are you able to stay present to, as I've talked about in other videos? Can I start to be present to the reality that these are fellow humans? That they are all, in one sense, my family. They are all brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers and cousins and uncles and aunts and grandparents. Because we're all related, like ultimately in the big family of humanity, we're all connected. We sense this in kind of, our, kind of growing environmental, awareness, right? That like, oh, what we do with our trash, like that impacts like other parts of the world, and we're starting to like see that like the world is interconnected, but the same thing is true of humanity. So your enemy, the person you despise, the people you despise, they are your family somehow. In some cases, your biological family may be some of your enemies, sadly. Or people who are like family to you. So family may not necessarily be a positive connotation, but my point is you're connected. We're all interconnected. Can we allow our those who we might call our enemies, whom we disagree with so intensely, can we allow them to be human, just like us? And if we can allow that, that is the beginnings, just the tiny beginnings of the possibility of being able to be curious, being able to allow ourselves to be curious, to allow ourselves to wonder, like, where are they coming from? Why might they believe what they believe? Why might they do what they do? And I think we need to aspire to be able to wonder that about even those that we think are the most evil. I'm not saying, just to be clear, I'm not saying that we have to agree with or should agree with or condone evil acts that are things that we consider evil. But even there, maybe especially there, we should aspire to develop the capacity to be grounded enough to be able to be in relationship with what seems evil to us without becoming evil ourselves. So in my work with clients, now I have the benefit, right? And I tell folks this, right? Like, this is part of the magic of the therapy relationship, is that I have the benefit of like, I'm not living with these folks, and they're not living with me. So we're not having to deal with each other on the day to day. And so that does allow for already just, it makes it easier. Now that alone is not enough, because if I'm not dealing with my own shit, as I'm said again and again, therapists have got to be dealing with their own stuff. We've got to be in our own therapy or something like therapy. If I'm not dealing with my own shit, then things are quickly going to come up in therapy with my clients, whether it's with couples or individuals, that I'm going to be like, I don't know how to be with that emotion. Like, And all I'm going to be able to offer is just the concepts, the intellectual ideas without the visceral capacity. I'm not actually going to be able to shepherd folks into transformation in that area. So this is one of the reasons that I go to therapy a ton. And I just keep working on my stuff because I want anything that a client brings up for me to be able to, on a visceral level, be like, okay, so this is the thing you're bringing up, and not have it be like, whoa, I just got, thrown off balance because it's like shit that I haven't been willing to face inside of myself. And it's not, here's the thing. It's not that I have to have had every detail of experience. It's about the underlying emotions, because the underlying emotions are common to all humans. So if I am continuing to work at the edges of my ability and dealing with my stuff, then I'm going to be able to, there's more and more areas I'm going to be able to be with other humans, whether clients or friends or whatever. So anyways, when I'm working with clients, like they, they'll bring up some whatever terrible, behavior or something, say it's like a couple. And so they're, maybe they've come in and they've had an awful fight and they treated each other terribly. And so because I've been, doing my work, I'm able to be with a lot of stuff, a lot of hard, ugly things. I can talk with them very matter of factly of like, okay, so let's start exploring this. Okay. And so then, when you called her like an ugly bitch, like let's pause right there. I want to make sense of like, let's you and I make sense of what's going on inside of you there. Like, obviously, yeah, you're angry, but what else is happening there? Or where you called him, a dumb asshole or whatever, right? Like, and so I'm able to get really curious, like why did they strike out in that way, strike out towards the other person? Why do they disbelieve them in this particular way? Why are they guarding themselves in this particular way? Like, I want to understand, I want to know the pain that is driving the beliefs. I want to know the life experiences that have shaped their beliefs about themselves and about one another. And so this obviously applies to thinking about, like thinking about people with different belief systems, whether, religious belief systems or other kinds of, kind of ideological, kind of worldviews, ways of seeing life, and what does it mean to live a healthy life. There are going to be reasons. There's reasons that we land in a particular like belief system. It's somehow, and that's somehow going to relate to the life that we have had. Some of that is the life that we were given, the family we were born into, the community, But then it's like, how were we impacted by that? And what's our personality mix? And how have we been wounded? And where have we been able to heal? And where have we not been able to heal? And so it's like, I want to be curious about all that. I want to understand all of that. And so even though that doesn't mean I'm going to come around to a place of like, oh, well, I now share your belief system. I want to at least be able to be like, okay, I can see why you would land there. I can see why that makes sense to you. And I can even maybe, and this is really a stretch, right? But this is really a true possibility. I might even be able to see like, wow, I can see there's bits of truth and wisdom in what you're saying. I don't accept the whole thing, but I can see how what you believe actually shines a light on some things that maybe are deficit in my own belief system. Maybe that's even been some of where I've been threatened, right? Like I don't want to examine my own belief system, whatever it might be. I don't want to examine my own ideology, because of my own pain, right? This is where I've got to be doing my own work. If I'm going to show up to the conversation honestly and like genuinely, I got to be trying to deal with my own shit as much as I can. Now, it's not going to be perfect. It's not like, okay, I'm going to be done dealing with my stuff, but I need to have dealt with it enough that I can be like, okay, I think that I have at least a little bit of capacity to try to listen and to try to ask questions, and not just immediately be like, well, but and like start arguing. So this is really hard, this hopefully maybe can be a little validating of why like it's so difficult, and why it's so difficult in our culture, right? Like this takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of taking responsibility. And here's part of what's hard, right? We could do all of that and the other person might not do any. And so we show up and listen and they don't listen to us at all. And we're like, well, what the fucking hell, Sean, like, why did I do this? This didn't work. Didn't get me to listen to them. It's like, well, but I said we don't have any control over whether they're going to listen to us or not. I do want you to be heard. I want to be heard, right? Like, I would like to be able to, share my thoughts on something and, like, not be criticized. Have someone be curious about it. Be like, well, I don't quite agree with you, but I'd like to understand more about that. Can you say more about this? Da, da, da. For someone to hold space for my imperfection and whatnot as a human and as a speaker, for example, as a communicator. So, but I can't control whether someone else will offer that to me or not. But I think, the whole, we have this whole sort of kind of culturally appropriated now idea of karma, right? Sort of what you put out into the world is what you get back. And there is something to that. It's not a formula, though. I mean, we moderns, we love to make things into a formula. I did this thing, therefore, da da da. It's like, well, it just doesn't work like that. Like it's not like that. But it's still better to put good out into the world. Because honestly, it's the only thing that we can do. Like, am I going to put more good out in the world, or am I going to put out more shit? It's going to be one or the other. And so if I'm not dealing with my stuff, if I'm not taking responsibility, then I'm putting more junk out into the world. I'm putting more shit out into the world. Even if I don't mean to. Even in my avoidance, though, like I'm not making the world a better place. Which, boy, that's that's a bit of a weighty thing. And I don't mean this to be a shaming thing. I don't want it to be a pressure thing, but I kind of do want you to feel the weightiness. Like, your life matters. You're connected to all the rest of us. I'm connected to all of you. Like, even if I don't get to meet, like, any of you that watch this video, like, we are still somehow connected. I mean, there's that whole thing about, like, what is it, the Kevin Bacon thing? Like, everybody's like, whatever, a few relationships away from knowing Kevin Bacon or something. I don't know. I feel like there's some like internet meme about that. But yeah, I mean, there is something statistically like fascinating about like relationally, like you can trace relationships such that it's like people aren't that far apart from each other. And now more than ever, I mean, the world is so interconnected, even though it's also becoming very fragmented and isolationist. But yeah, we are ultimately still somehow family. So yeah, I wish it was easier for all of us, for you, for me. But I think ultimately what we can do something about is us. And so, the question of how do we talk to people we disagree with? It's like, well, we start by building our capacity to listen, to truly listen, not just suck it up and listen, but actually like be with the difficult emotions inside of us, and be able to be present to somebody who's very different from us, who believes things that we find, perhaps quite offensive, and to be able to be curious, to wonder, like, what kind of journey makes that belief system, or that way of seeing this situation, or that way of responding or coping or whatever the context may be. What kind of life would lead that person to that feeling like the best thing and that making sense to them? Can I be curious about that? Can I have compassion on them as a fellow human? Can I have the humility to admit that though I can hold to my beliefs and, and be like, I think there's something to them, I'm probably not right about every single detail. That if I'm a human being who's growing, there's inevitably going to be things years from now that I'll look back and be like, yeah, I don't quite believe that the same way. Which doesn't mean that we're going to like abandon all our beliefs over time, but our relationship to some of them may change. I mean, for me, in terms of faith, like my faith has evolved a lot, and it there has been a through line for me. But yeah, I mean, my relationship with God is very different than it once was. It's thankfully no longer shaming. But yeah, anyways, I won't go further down another theological, spiritual rabbit trail. But yeah, so there's my invitation, my challenging invitation. is yeah, will you, in these places where you disagree with people, will you turn towards what's coming up in you and try to be with that and seek help for being with that? In order that you can build up your capacity to start to wonder about, have empathy for, be curious about your fellow humans. Um, yeah. Hmm. Well, until next time, peace be with you.